steps that we use at Thread. So this is just what we do. Every organization is different. We found this to kind of be a tried and true process to evaluate candidates. So I'll give a little brief explanation of what we're looking for each step and why we include them. The initial phone screen, again, very quick. We recommend about 30 minutes, short enough to be respectful of the candidate's time, but sufficient enough that we feel that we've learned more about the candidate than we can from their application materials. We listen for thoughtful responses, a genuine interest in this specific role, as well as the aptitude necessary and the experience necessary for the position. We ensure consistency in the process. We ask the same questions to each candidate, and we evaluate their responses against what we have written in the position description, as well as our candidate criteria. And we always wrap up these calls by outlining the steps of the process, meaning how many interviews you can expect if you advance, what our timeline is, when they can expect to hear from us next, to ensure full transparency in the process. This is a candidates market, another theme you're going to hear me talk about a lot. So strong development candidates will not be on the market for very long. So it's just as important to make sure that we are being fully transparent from the start, and that your organization stands out as quickly as possible and as soon as possible in their first introduction to the organization.
I'll add into there that to Stela's point that it's a candidates market, this is a mutual sales process, if you will, a mutual process of deciding if you're the right fit for each other. And so a candidate is evaluating the organization, the job, you as one of their potential colleagues, if you're the one screening doing this phone screen. And the more organized you present in this process, just the way Stela's laying it out, it's already sending a signal of what it would be like to work at your organization. And that you have processes, you communicate clearly, that you respect people's time. And so Stela's point of being a candidates market, remember that you are presenting, you are selling the organization and this opportunity just as much throughout this entire process as they're selling themselves to you as a candidate. So keep that piece in mind as Stela keeps talking.
Absolutely. You'll probably be sick of it because we're really going to drive it home. So then the next step for those who want to advance is, the hiring manager. So this is either the executive director, whoever the immediate supervisor is going to be. That's who we recommend having for the second interview. So if you are lucky enough to have some kind of an HR department, this should be the one-on-one with you, the person who is going to be working day to day with this candidate. So like the phone screen, the questions should be the same for each candidate, but these should really go above and beyond and dig into the candidates, not just core competencies, but their work style, anything specific to your work environment. So are they going to need to manage up? Is their supervisor going to be remote? How do they manage up and down? Just things that are going to be really important to you as you're working side by side with this person. And focus on your own gut check with this candidate. So is this someone that you will feel comfortable communicating with? Can you work side by side with this person? Even if the candidate checks all the boxes, and if Thread did this and I talked to them first and I love this candidate, even if they check the boxes, if there's still something that your gut is telling you, I'm not sure about this person, that's really going to impact, both of your future success with the organization. So, don't ignore your gut. The interview process is the best time for you to explore the dynamic with the candidate. And, this is a good time in that evaluation process. And again, like Loree said, vice versa, the candidate is doing the same thing. So, they're ensuring that the organization and working with you is going to be the right thing for them. The next step that we do is practical exercises. And so I'd like to kind of give a pretty healthy explanation of what we do here. So this gives you a good idea of the candidate's work style, logic flow, writing style, and it gives the candidate a good idea of the type of work that they'll be expected to do. Because of that, these are really important because, you want to choose exercises that ensure whatever skills they're going to need for the role will be showcased in the practicals. So is it donor communication? Is it managing a CRM system? Is it how they think in terms of strategy and goal setting? We have some, and we can share these if you all are interested, some sample exercises that we do. I'll get into what we don't do, but what we do is we recommend a wide window for completion. So we typically give candidates 72 hours to complete these. It's designed to be long enough that it doesn't interfere with their work or personal life. It should only take an hour or two, but we give them a window. And we also ask them to tell us when they want to receive the exercises. Some people like to do it during the weekend. Some people like to do it during the week, all for their own reasons. So we leave that in their hands. Now, when I say practical exercises, I want to be really deliberate and intentional to say that this is not, one thing we do not recommend are mock presentations or mock interviews as a part of this kind of next step or final round of interviews. We really highly discourage this practice for a number of reasons. First of all, it's very, very time consuming for the candidate. It can be really stressful for the candidate, and it can be perceived as a gotcha exercise, something where you're trying to catch the candidate slipping. You didn't do enough research about us. You don't know us. You can't speak our language. And really, I think most importantly, going hand in hand with that time consuming piece, it can be perceived as requiring or asking a candidate to do work for the organization without compensation and without being, using their ideas and using their time for ultimately not get selected. It doesn't leave a great impression. And so we tend to discourage organizations from doing that type of exercise, and certainly presentations. And so then, we do those. I always try to emphasize that they're very low lift and really meant to be a kind of written extension of a verbal interview. So then from there, the practical exercises, we hope, help you decide who you want to bring to the final round of interviews. This is a chance for not just the hiring team, but your key staff and volunteers, including, potentially representatives from your board who will be working closely with the candidates. So if this person is going to be supervising staff, we recommend that staff at least has some role in this final interview. If this is a hybrid or in-office position, or even a locally remote position, you should have at least one in-person interview. So this is something that's kind of evolved over the past 3 years, when for a long time we couldn't do anything in person. And then what we were finding is that the hires that were made exclusively virtually for organizations that are more in-person hybrid, or there's some kind of in-person component to it, it ended up being difficult for hiring managers to really ascertain what it was like to work with that person. So this is the opportunity, I would say, for there to be some sort of one-on-one in-person or some type of in-person component, especially if your one-on-one interview was virtual, which we've seen it both ways, but a lot of times because of time and the way the world is now and the reality of Zoom interviews, that kind of second round will be a one-on-one virtual interview. So in terms of the format, assuming this is an in-person interview, as a team, discuss what makes the most sense. So is it going to be, individual interviews where people coming in and out of the room, where the candidate sits in the room? Are you going to have small groups or panels? It's going to be formal or informal or different, you're going to have things in between. The most important thing is that you're mindful and respectful of the candidate's time. Talking about how this is a two-way street. I love to share the story that I had an interview with an organization that was from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It went long. I only had one small bathroom break. I wasn't taken to lunch. I wasn't offered coffee. I wasn't even offered water. So, needless to say, I was not with that organization. So, remember that the candidate is interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. So, so be really mindful of the time and effort that a candidate is putting forward in this process. And then finally, the other big piece of this final interview is making sure that as a group, everyone who has spoken to the candidate, that you have an opportunity to come together and compare notes. Everyone is given the opportunity to provide their input and feedback. And of course, ultimately, it may be up to you or the hiring manager on who makes the decision on who is ultimately hired. But make sure that you are able to receive and hear all of the input from the folks that met with all of the candidates. And an equally important piece of this is, okay, let's say that our top candidate declines the offer. How comfortable is everyone with a different candidate. So would you be comfortable with any of the people that we talked to today? Is there anyone that we absolutely wouldn't want to move forward should our top candidate fall through? And then finally, the reference checks. When you request these, who they are, how many references, it's really up to you and your organization. I find that most organizations have their standard. We have things that we request, but we always, leave it up to the organization. The only thing that we're a little less flexible on in our recommendations is making sure that the questions that you're asking during the reference check drive at things that you want to know as a supervisor. So, asking the references, would you hire this person again? How do they handle stress? What should I know to manage this person effectively? These are things that, may not make or break whether you make an offer. It may, but even if it doesn't, it can help you effectively manage this person when they're in the role, and you'll know what to look out for. That we find they're really helpful for that. And also, if you get conflicting information, that's why we always say get at least 3 references, preferably more, but don't. As one of our colleagues say it would be terrible if one kind of questionable reference or somebody who knows somebody from somebody, you hear something about this candidate and it poisons the well. Make sure you're getting a full picture of what this candidate could potentially offer to your organization.
Stella, we have a question about some of the material here. So one question is, so if the organization is totally virtual, is there a need for an in-person interview? Since you talked about those in-person organizations, what would you say on the flip side there?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of times it's not realistic to have an in-person interview, obviously. The only exception I would say is if you're an entirely virtual office, and I know we've worked with these partners where you are an entirely virtual office, like Thread is an entirely virtual office, but but a lot of us are here in the same location. So you might be an organization that is entirely virtual, even though you're in the same, the community you serve is all in the same city or town. In those cases, we would still recommend that that you take some opportunity. The final interview doesn't have to be in person, but even if it's just the hiring manager meeting for coffee, either before or after that final interview, just to ask some questions and meet that person face to face. But if you are a national or international, completely virtual organization, it's just not realistic to have that in person. It would be nice, but that's not something that you should necessarily feel like you need to spend the budget on.